The Raiders and the Steelers. Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth there for NBC. I don't know if you saw it or not, but the embattled Kenny Pickett. He looked all right. He ain't like the greatest quarterback in the world, but he had 235 yards and a couple of touchdown passes. And Pittsburgh holding off Vegas 23-18. They get the win. First meeting between the teams in Vegas since the Raiders. They move every 20 years. I have Oakland, they go to L.A., back to Oakland. Now they're in Vegas. 20 years from now, they'll be in Timbuktu. But for now, they're in Vegas. And so there you go. And also the Steelers winning against the Raiders. They don't play very often, but for the first time on the road since the mid-'90s. 1995, which was shortly after the Raiders left L.A. to go back to Northern California. Now, the story, though. Vegas trailed this game. They were out 23-7. You saw the game. You know that going to the fourth quarter. And with that Steelers defense, you would assume the position that there's no mathematical way the Raiders would have even a chance to win the game. But that's why they play the game. That's why they play the game. And the Raiders actually had a shot to tie the game in the final minutes. But then Josh McDaniels did the most Josh McDaniels thing you could possibly do. He said, you know what? Rather than go for it, it's 4th down and 4 from the 8-yard line of the Steelers. You're down 8. So you're at 4th and 4 at the 8-yard line. I don't want to do. I'm going to kick a field goal. So I'm down at that point. You do the math on that. You kick a field goal, you're down by 5. And I'm going to get the football back. And we're going to go down. We're going to win the game. And so Chris Boswell made the field goal for the Steelers. He made 3 of them, but the Raiders made their field goal, and they did not end up winning the game, and they blew their shot. They blew their opportunity to at least get a tie. You would have the touchdown and the 2-point conversion at the end. So let us discuss. We'll start with that, the end of game decision, because that's the story that people are buzzing about there. What was Josh McDaniels thinking? What was the Raiders coach thinking here? Calling that play, calling for the field goal at the end, down by 8, final minutes. You decide to go for the field goal. What was he thinking? I've got Twilight Zone, Gentleman's Club, and Rickshaw. But rather than just give those to you first, let's hear from Josh McDaniels. Here is what Josh McDaniels told the assembled media on why he did the thing that he did at the time he did it. Let's go to the audio tape.
To win it with a touchdown, if you get the ball back, you try to go for it there, and then if you happen to convert, then you got to make the 2-point conversion, all the rest of it. So just as of the decisions you got to make. I thought we did a decent job of putting ourselves in 3rd down there the next series with the defense to try to have a play to get off the field, and we didn't handle that play very well. You're going to need another possession anyway. You know what I mean? So it's not a lack of confidence.
Yeah, but you can't lose if you tie the game. So I disagree with what McDaniels had to say. So he went unorthodox here. I said we had Twilight Zone, Gentleman's Club, and Rickshaw. So he went unorthodox. He got cute. He became Cutie Pie. Cutie Pie the coach. He became cute here at the end of the game. And imagine, if you will, a world where the head coach doesn't trust his quarterback, because that's just what happened. There's no other way to spin it. This is the Twilight Zone. Josh McDaniels does not trust Jimmy Garoppolo. And maybe he shouldn't, the way Garoppolo's playing right now. That might be the right position. But there's only one way to interpret what the Raiders did at the end of that game. That is the head coach saying, my quarterback blows, and I don't want the game in his hands at the end. I don't trust him. I don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo. That is what the head coach of the Raiders said. And that's it. If you go to the ballot box, this was a vote of no confidence for Jimmy G. It was. You're at the 8-yard line. You convert 4th down. You connect the 2-point conversion. You're tied up. Now, you do have to get the ball back, but you can't lose if the Steelers don't score and the game goes to overtime. And then you have an opportunity there. Instead, he kicks the little chip shot field goal, and that ends up, as it turns out, cementing that the Raiders would lose, trusting the silver and black defense more than the Jimmy Garoppolo-led offense. Now, following that theme, page 2 here, as we break down the Sunday night game, you take a couple of steps back and you examine the overall performance of the quarterback, of what's going on there 3 games. And the Raiders were not expected to be any good this year. And by the way, they're not. They're not any good. They barely beat the Broncos, who just gave up a 70-burger to the Miami Dolphins. But anyway, here, listen, how is the Jimmy Garoppolo era looking for the Raiders at this particular point? Well, this is a trip to the Gentlemen's Club. They know a thing or two about Gentlemen's Clubs in Vegas. This is what's known as a deja vu situation, minus the showgirls, although they do have showgirls in Vegas. Now, we expected when Garoppolo went to the Raiders, like, well, this is going to be a small upgrade, right? This would be a tiny upgrade. Yeah, not much, but Derek Carr wasn't very good either, so okay. So we spot check the Vegas quarterback room at this particular point, and what do we have? Well, here's what we have. We have a downgrade to the Mambo. How low can you go? This is the case. And now it's a mixed bag. Garoppolo, he had 300-plus yards passing in this game and a couple of touchdowns. But, yeah, he can find Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams is fine putting up his stats. He's got 13 catches and 172 yards. And those touchdowns were both to Devontae Adams, but the interceptions. And Garoppolo, 3 more interceptions. He now leads the NFL in interceptions with 6 of them through 3 games. So you can do the math on that. If you've thrown 6 interceptions in 3 games, that is an average of 2 per game. And my computer-like brain tells me if Garoppolo were to play all 17 games, which he won't, in fact, I would be surprised if he even plays next week, but Garoppolo will be at 34 interceptions, which I don't think is good. I didn't play in the NFL. What do I know? I just host an overnight show. But I don't think when you're starting quarterbacks on pace to throw 34 interceptions that things are going well. But again, now the last word, let's take a little snapshot at the Pittsburgh side of things. Does this victory take the heat off the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, the much maligned Matt Canada, and to a lesser degree, Kenny Pickett? So we'll start with the offensive coordinator, and I'm shaking my head. No, that is not the case here. That Pittsburgh, while they certainly looked better, it didn't take much to look better. Right? It didn't take much to look better. They were so terrible against the Cleveland Browns that any kind of pulse, you're like, all right, now we're building something here. Now we got something, right? A little combo meal going on all of a sudden here. But the thing is, Kenny Pickett still has to get so much better. Right? Here's how I would describe the Steeler offense. They went from horse and buggy to a rickshaw. So that's an upgrade, right? You'd rather have a rickshaw than a horse and buggy, but you still would rather get something better. So right now they're a rickshaw. They were a horse and buggy. So it's baby steps. You can say that. And for Kenny Pickett, certainly baby steps. I mean, his numbers were not terrible. Kind of more of a Dak Prescott type stat line, or on a good day, Mac Jones with the Patriots. But the 23 points does not impress me. In an era where the Dolphins can score 70, to put up 23 points and say, hey, we were really good. We had 23 points. I don't think the Raiders are any good. So I wouldn't get too worked up about that. Now, as far as the atmosphere in Vegas, and if you saw the broadcast, I was obviously at the game, but it certainly was a hostile takeover as anticipated there. There were terrible towels galore. And it was a little hidden because the Raider fan base wears a lot of black. The Steeler fan base wears a lot of black. But that yellow, the gold, stands out there. And it continues here. The Raiders can take a number from the same deli counter as the Rams and the Chargers there, that these teams have beautiful stadiums. And they don't have packed houses of fans. Not that it matters, per se, in wins and losses. The Rams played a road game at home against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game and won a couple years ago because they were the better team. It didn't matter that there were all 49er fans there. So that part of it, I will push back on. But it just is kind of a bad look, right? The Raiders, everywhere I go, I see Raider fans, but they can't even fill their own stadium. It's fascinating to me. There's so many Raider fans out there, but they're not going to the game. Maybe it's too expensive. I don't know. Those are the most expensive tickets in the NFL, and it's not even close. All right, that's a destination. And then, so the Raiders at home in Vegas, what are the Raiders? The Raiders are just another Las Vegas Strip show. You might as it's like a Sunday night. It's like, am I going to see the Blue Man Group over at Luxor? Am I going to see Copperfield at the MGM or Cirque du Soleil? I don't know. Maybe I'll go see the Raiders, the Flying Raiders brothers. I'll go see what's going on in that circus out there with the Raiders and all that. And Mark Davis, listen, he doesn't care. The Raiders, they decide to kick a field goal late in the game. You can't upset the fan base. The Steeler fans were all excited. They were like, this is great. It's wonderful. Welcome under the big top there. But Mark Davis, hey, as long as the tickets are sold and the overpriced beer and the hot dogs and the nachos and the sandwiches and all that, that's all that matters. You know, well, we have warm bodies there. They might be pulling for the other team, but so be it. All right? Eyeballs in the stands. Eyeballs in the stands. And eyeballs are eyeballs. Just like in my business here in radio, ears are ears. As long as you're listening, as long as you're locked in.